Rent-A-Bastard. That was the name of the company that my 82-year-old father wanted to start a few years back. Sounds a bit negative, doesn't it? But you see, my dad's intent was actually quite the opposite, because he was out to save the day. My dad knew that all of us at one point or another have trouble with service providers, whether it be for shoddy product, late delivery, perhaps an error in billing. He also knew that most of us do not like confrontation. He, on the other hand, thrived on it. So his simple business plan was you could hire him to take on your vendor problem. He would call up customer service and wrangle with them until he got solution. Your problem solved? His whole day was made. Now, I don't know whether you're happy or sad to know this, but this business never did get beyond the discussion stages. But I tell you this story because it's a wonderful example of how my dad shared his practical wisdom in often unusual and hilarious ways. The man was definitely one of my biggest heroes. So what about you? Who are the people who have most profoundly affected you in your own life story so far? Chances are the people who come to mind for many of you will not be your same age. Some may be older, some may be younger. But the point is, the relationships we build between generations are critical to all of us. And I firmly believe that they're going to become even more valuable because these are the relationships that are just brimming with potential to help us navigate the cultural changes that are now upon us. You see, we've reached a demographic tipping point. When my dear father passed away in 2013, he was just 2 weeks shy of his 84th birthday. And of course, that seemed way too soon to me and my 3 brothers. But the fact of the matter is, Dad lived more than 20 years longer than what would have been predicted for him on the day of his birth, February 14th, 1929. That's because he benefited, as do all of us, from the tremendous advances made in the 20th century in what are called the 3 S's: sanitation, safety, and science. And it's these advances that have added more than 3 decades to average life expectancy in the United States. Did you know that 20% of the US population will be age 65 or over by the year 2030? That means that 11,000 people a day celebrate their 65th birthday. Coincidentally, about the same number of babies are born in the United States each day. So, as some of you may recall, the traditional graph of US population growth used to look like a triangle, but it now looks more like a rectangle, even as we project out to the year 2060. So what does all this mean? Actually, it's pretty profound. Because for the first time in human history, most people, not just a select few, but most people can count on living to old age. Our children will grow up surrounded by elders. And it will not be uncommon in future for 4 and even 5 generations to be alive at the same time. Just imagine a world with great-great-grandparents all around us. Now, I guarantee you that if my father were still with us, he would be right here in the front row, and this is the point when he would lean over to someone sitting next to him, and he would ask in the loudest whisper, "What are we going to do with all those old people?" You see, my dad never, ever thought of himself as old. But he did carry around some stereotypic baggage, so he worried that if he ever did reach old age, it might be a problem. But here's the thing. Old age is not a problem. It's a goal, and we all should be delighted that we're achieving this goal to such large extent. Now, are there problems associated with our newfound success? Most definitely. People begin to think about these issues. They are now beginning to realize something that my dad, I'm channeling my dad right now, innately knew. You see, he was the fellow who never wanted to go to the senior center because he said only old people hung out there. Now, by now you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, this guy, he had such a problem with denial. But actually, he was on to something. Because population aging is not just about old people. It's about a longer life. And we can't just think about 30 years being tacked onto the end. We have to think about how we can all live these longer lives in a happier and healthier fashion from the beginning. So, how are we going to do that? Well, I'm convinced that vertical connections are the key. And we know that since we're actually going to all be living for a longer time, that we're going to have to make these vertical connections. But you know, how many of us like to do things just because we have to? Frankly, I think the more compelling question is, what would make us want to make more vertical connections? And in order to find the answer to that, I actually had to take a huge leap across the generational divide, and I actually, last year, went back to college myself to do a year-long fellowship at a major university on the West Coast. Talk about vertical connections. I was immediately immersed on projects with people of all different ages, most of whom were decades younger than me. And one of the most interesting projects that I got to work on was with a team, and we wrote a report that summarized all the wonderful work that's being done across the country by people who are interested in connecting older adults with kids. Now, as you can imagine, I'm pretty interested in those kinds of connections. But one of the reasons they intrigue me so much is that the skills and needs of both generations fit together like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Let me explain how this works. Although most people concentrate on the negative, there are some positives that actually occur with aging. Most notably, life experience gives adults a much broader emotional perspective. Remember Rent-A-Bastard? My dad wasn't just good at confrontation. He was good at conflict resolution and zeroing in on what really matters. Adults also have specific needs. We develop a natural urge to give back to the next generation. This is most obvious when young adults start to become parents, but it's something that continues to evolve as we grow and age and search for our purpose on this planet. And of course, we always want to have a sense of relevancy as we do this. On the flip side, today's youth, with their boundless curiosity and quick intellect, have no trouble whatsoever being relevant, especially when it comes to technology. But they need to learn about a sense of self, and they have to learn about things like resilience and self-control. So if done correctly, pairing older adults with youth can set up a kind of virtuous circle for both, where older adults provide the emotional support and the sense of worth that youth need. In turn, youth provide the sense of purpose and relevance that older people crave. Now, the really fresh perspective here is that the best vertical connections are those that have mutual benefit. Now, that may not sound like something breakthrough to you, but the fact of the matter is, it requires a huge shift in attitude. Because instead of thinking about one population as the problem and the other generation as the cure, we now think of us all as assets. And the reason we should want to make more vertical connections is because we not only all have something to offer, but we also each have something to gain. Culture can be slow to change, but we as individuals have the power to speed things up. So I ask each of you, no matter who you are or what your age, commit to this new view. And then take action. Insist that people of different ages be on your teams at work. Seek the opportunities in your communities that offer multi-age perspectives and interactions. Don't just wait for vertical connections to come your way. Be the catalyst and go out and create them yourself. And I promise you, the impact will make your longer life a better life. Thank you.